So, you're interested in reading more manga by the creator of Chainsaw Man. Where should you start? The first season of Chainsaw Man anime is now over. It wasn't perfect, but overall I enjoyed it. So I hope y'all watched Chainsaw Man and supported all the people who worked so hard on it. Real quick sidebar, when I first heard a bit of the opening, I wasn't that impressed. But when I saw the whole opening,
it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. It's watermelon inside a water.
I've watched that intro so many times now. My guess is, if you haven't read Chainsaw Man before the anime came out, I'm betting after the first couple of episodes you've decided to give the manga a try. However, if you are anime only, or if you've already read the whole series, I want to talk a bit about the creator Tatsuki Fujimoto's other works he's done before and in between Chainsaw Man. Granted, I haven't read all of his works. I've only read Fire Punch, Look Back, and Goodbye Eri. Fire Punch was Fujimoto's first serialized work before Chainsaw Man, and Look Back and Goodbye Eri are two one-shots published between parts 1 and 2 of Chainsaw Man. Literally, all three of them have made me cry. In addition, if you're interested, his very first published works are being collected and published in Tatsuki Fujimoto before Chainsaw Man 17 through 21 and 22 through 26. You're interested in reading more manga by Tatsuki Fujimoto. Where should you start? Well, that really depends on what you're looking for. So let's go through these 3 different stories and maybe see if one interests you. First off, we got Fire Punch. Fire Punch was serialized in Shonen Jump Plus from 2016 to 2018. It's about a world where the Earth is in the middle of an ice age caused by a woman only known as the Ice Witch, and humanity is struggling to survive. The main character's name is Agni, and he lives in a small village with his sister Luna. In this world, there are people with blessings, or basically superpowers. They're like mutants, they're just born with them. Agni and his sister have a similar power, that of regeneration. Agni's is much more powerful, and he can regenerate almost instantaneously. Now, because of the circumstances in which this town finds itself, food is scarce and people are starving. Agni does what any young boy would do and offers himself up as food. But since he can regenerate, he just chops a limb off, it grows back, he chops another one off, rinse and repeat. Then he delivers these severed limbs to the townsfolk. Already, you might notice that this manga is a little bleak. Long story short, a group of armed men arrive in the village, and with them is a man whose blessing is he can produce fire that will continue to burn till the thing that is burning is completely consumed and turned to ash. They see that there are cannibals, and they burn everyone to a crisp. Except for Agni. Because of his regenerative abilities and of the fire's properties, Agni can just continue to burn forever. However, it is important to note that if he resists his powers, he can let the fire consume him, welcoming death. Right as he's about to do so, he sees his dying sister lying on the ground. Her last words to him are to live. This is how Agni becomes Fire Punch, the menace who wanders around the world, punching people, while on fire. Do you get it?
Do you understand?
I won't go into more details to avoid spoilers, but hopefully you get a sense of the premise now. Fire Punch is probably one of the most mature things Fujimoto has published. Chainsaw Man is very much toned down in comparison. Fire Punch deals with so many heavy topics such as and cannibalism. The fact that I had to censor everything but allowed cannibalism should give you a little indication of what you're in for. While it is very mature, it is still a deeply emotional story that highlights where Fujimoto shines the brightest. It's got all the elements that you love from Chainsaw Man. A world filled with imagination and creativity, and some depravity, a whole bunch of what the actual
Fire Punch
is happening moments. Seriously, so much happens in every chapter that it's a bit difficult to process at times, but in a good way. It's got a very frantic style of pacing that leaves you confused, but still thirsting for more. Nothing is ever expected, and reading it makes you feel like you're going insane yourself, but that's what makes it so fun. It's also funny in a bizarre way, kind of like when Berserk has some funny moments. In addition, the art is spectacular. If Chainsaw Man's action was your favorite part, then Fire Punch is probably the best thing for you. You can tell Fujimoto has a deep love for movies, as is expressed in nearly all of his works, and that makes his action sequences deeply cinematic. To be honest, out of all of Fujimoto's works that I've read, Fire Punch is the one that made me the least emotional. However, it is one of the more existential things I've read, making me question the nature of humanity, contemplate reasons to continue living, and think about the cycle of violence. The story continues to evolve and change in unexpected ways, but somehow manages to maintain its core themes of religious fanaticism, revenge and forgiveness, and finding a purpose for living throughout. Fire Punch is a great story that serves as a proto-Chainsaw Man. You can see elements and themes that will be improved upon to greater effect in his future works. So if you're looking for a dark, post-apocalyptic future that will wreck your brain and your heart, and you're also over 18 presumably, check out Fire Punch. Next up, we're going to talk about Look Back, a one-shot manga released in June of 2021. Instead of taking place in a post-apocalyptic future with fantastical superpowered characters, this story setting is a lot more realistic and grounded. A story about an aspiring artist. We meet Fujino, a young girl in grade school who draws short 4-panel comics for the school paper. Because of the fact that she is technically published and everyone always tells her how great her comics are, she's got this huge ego about her skills. That is, until she hears about a student who never comes to class who is seemingly even better than her. I mean, let's compare these two panels. Yep, that's about how I would react too. Anyway, this mysterious student's name is Kiyomoto. This realization crushes Fujino, who then proceeds to alienate herself from her friends and family in order to practice and improve her drawing abilities. For years, Fujino practices her art skills and continues to submit to the school paper. Kiyomoto still turns in better work than she does, and she gives up on art for a little bit. In a turn of events, Fujino actually goes to meet Kiyomoto and discovers that Kiyomoto is actually a huge fan of her work in her comics, and that inspires her to get back into art. The two form a partnership and start to make manga together. Of course, Fujimoto loves putting some supernatural, fantastical elements into his works, and Look Back is no different. It seems like it comes out of nowhere at first, but it is executed well enough that it evoked an emotional response out of me. And that emotional response? Sadness, happiness, all the emotions that bring up tears. Weird for me to feel both of those emotions at the same time, but that just proves how good of a storyteller Fujimoto is. I won't get too much into spoilers because I believe this manga is something you really need to experience for yourself. What I will talk about though, is the art. After reading Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch, I was in absolute awe of Fujimoto's art and Look Back. The amount of detail in the backgrounds not only gives the setting a sense of life, but also has its own meaning in the themes of the story. Fujimoto also utilizes the small details in order to indicate the passage of time in a very cinematic way. The panels and story beats are paced very well too, allowing for smooth transitions from scene to scene. Fujimoto really shines with his line work. He uses a much lighter style of drawing most of the time, with varied pen weights to indicate the different emotions of different scenes. Of course, when compared to his serialized works, the amount of effort and detail he puts in makes sense. With a one-shot like this, he doesn't have to worry about the weekly grind of releasing manga chapters. And reading this, I really felt like he was able to pour his whole heart and soul into it. For me, a true work of art is not only something that can evoke an emotion out of an audience, but something that lets the audience understand how the artist felt while doing it. In a strange way, reading Look Back felt like a personal conversation with Fujimoto, as if he was telling me his own life story, not through the scenes he drew, but through the emotions he placed in them. Look Back made me cry. It inspired me to pick up my own pen and draw the stories I've had in my mind and heart. But Fujimoto didn't stop there. A year after Look Back, Fujimoto released another one-shot titled Goodbye Eri in April of 2022. This story is similar to Look Back in that it is about a student who is creative. In this case, instead of a manga artist, the protagonist Yuta gets a smartphone for his birthday and makes a movie. This is a theme that is explored in a lot of Fujimoto's works. Movies play an important role in Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man. Heck, the intro of Chainsaw Man includes a bunch of references to other movies, and there's literally the cast of the show sitting in a movie theater watching movies. But neither Fire Punch nor Chainsaw Man focus on movies as much as Goodbye Eri. Goodbye Eri is all about movies, to the extent that Fujimoto decided to draw it as if it were a movie. The story revolves around Yuta as he films the events of his mom as she faces her terminal illness. After her death, he shows it at a student festival and is ridiculed for it. Then, he meets a girl named Eri, who is the one person who enjoyed his movie, but feels like he could do better. So every day, Eri shows Yuta different movies until he is ready to make another that is even better than the first. What is really cool about this story is that the compositions of every panel and scene evoke different emotions. When Yuta is in distress, the panels are erratic and skewed. When things are peaceful, happy, or even melancholic, there are some pages that consist of the same panel several times with slight differences. Even without words, you can understand how Yuta is feeling in a moment just by the way the panels are set up, even if he's not featured in them. That is just a cool little detail, but it helps the manga feel a whole lot more cinematic. Even more cinematic than Look Back, it feels a lot like a spiritual successor to Look Back in a way. At their base elements, they are very similar stories, but they explore different themes in a unique way. In this one especially, I felt like I was able to truly understand what Fujimoto was feeling while he drew this manga. This one especially feels a lot like a reaction to the success of Chainsaw Man and his other manga, and as he's growing in popularity, how does he feel about that? There is one line in particular when Yuta's dad talks to him and says, "Ever since you were little, you've always sprinkled a pinch of fantasy into everything." This line feels like something said to Fujimoto himself, and it's really reflected in this work. Goodbye Eri and Look Back both seem to be Fujimoto's emotional responses to Chainsaw Man, his most popular work to date. From wanting to draw and create, alienating those close to you, to responding to criticisms, these two stories are Fujimoto bearing his soul to an audience. This is a man with a lot to say and a lot to feel, but I can't think of another creator who made me understand them just by reading their work more than Fujimoto. I know there are others out there, but for me, right now, in this moment, Fujimoto is my favorite manga creator who has made me feel so much with so little. Thank you everyone for watching. If you have any more recommended manga to read, please comment below. I don't claim to be an expert in manga or anything, I just like to talk about my feelings and thoughts. YouTube is basically just a good outlet for me. I've been recommended Berserk by so many people, so I started it and just finished the Golden Age arc, so expect a video on that in about the next 6 months based on my upload rate. Thank you so much, and keep reading.